Hey, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Todyl's Spotlight Series. This is a series where we're focusing on the MSPs in the space and talking about different subjects. Today, we have a very special guest. We have JP Keesy from F1 Technologies, and we're going to talk a bit about EOS, and then if time permits, we're going to jump into some other things. But first, I'd like JP to introduce himself and talk a little bit about who he is and what his business does.
Least favorite part about these things is talking about myself. JP Keesy, with F1 Information Technologies, F1 IT for short. I've been in the IT industry, technology in some form or fashion since the very early 80s. Very shortly in the mid 80s, I was doing things I probably shouldn't do. Learned some of them from Kevin Mitnick and, those type of people. So, um, got the entrepreneurial bug in the late 90s and started my own company with a business partner from um, another consulting firm at the time, and grew our company to what it is now. We've revenue wise is close to 5 million and in gross revenue, and about 20 people that are on our team that make it all happen and allow me to do these type of things. So we're based out of Fort Worth, Texas. And just so everyone knows, yes, that's the DFW area, but as we like to say over here in Fort Worth, life's a little too short to live in Dallas. So
I'm not going to say anything.
we love
I
Dallas. We
won't say
do.
anything about the other side, but I can say that Fort Worth is one of my favorite places. And I've been to JP's office and some of JP's favorite stomping grounds. And he may be the reason why I love Fort Worth so much, but I do love Fort Worth. It's a great place to hang out and visit. There's so much stuff to do, and it's just old school what cowboy really is. And I've gotten to see that up close and personal too a couple of times. So really love it. Just for everybody out there, this is actually episode 2. JP, you're on, right? You're on the early beginnings of the Total Spotlight series. So
Nice.
episode 2. So let's dive right in here.
Sure.
I've known you for a long time, so I've seen your business in a bunch of different iterations, and the ups, the downs. I've gotten the phone calls and we've had conversations about the real tough times, and I honestly think that's where most MSPs should learn from, is hear other people's stories that talk about not just the good stuff, right? You and I have had this conversation so many times where you go to an event and people are on stage talking about how we're making millions, we're doing this, we're doing that. If you don't do it this way, you're a loser. And so wrong way of handling things. Whereas, hey, do you know how many times I screwed up? And this is how I fixed those things, and that type of mentality. So I think it's kind of special that we're talking about EOS, because it's something that was near and dear to my heart, even however many years ago it was when we jumped into it to now. And I watch business transform when they get into it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts just initially on EOS, which one you're using. Is it Patterson? Is it Traction? Are there variations? And how you're working through the process. And then we'll just I'm going to bounce some questions off you about this so that the people watching get a better understanding.
Sure. I actually first read Traction by Gino Wickman, gosh, 6 years ago or so, maybe
Mm-hmm.
7, and knew we needed to do something back in those days. As an owner, this is probably nothing new to many other MSP owners out there, or MSSP owners. You go through those ups and downs, those peaks and valleys, and some of them are so low that you're not quite sure you're ever going to be able to get out of it. It happened to be one of those times I was reading Traction, and I did a little research, and so I found out that Gino actually, I think, came from Scaling Up, and him and the other guy kind of said, "Okay, let's make this a little more simpler." And he did, and so read it, kept telling my business partners, "Come on, let's do this, let's implement this." And he's like, "Yeah, go for it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm definitely not quite the person to run that thing." And so, or even try. And so fast forward a little bit, and I'm talking to Rex and some of those guys and at sea level, and we were at a point where we were like, we've got to do something. We're doing okay, got a little bit of cash, and so we need to reinvest back into it to see what we can really try to accomplish here. And so that being said, we decided that we were going to do the EOS mainly because as we were looking at I think Rex sold out to PAX 8 and um, was it's PAX 8 Academy Value Creation Coaching or something like that, VCC. And so we decided to be a real glutton for punishment and do both at the same time. So we started there one-on-one coaching and EOS at the exact same time. And primarily, it was only, well, I say at the same time, it's a couple of weeks apart because constantly they were referring to terms that I had heard and read about, which was all EOS stuff, rocks and all these different things, level 10 meetings and 2 days and all this stuff, and realized, okay, I got to go back and revisit this. But I found this book called What the Heck is EOS, still written by Gino, and it was much shorter. I put it on 1.2 speed on Audible and had it finished in about an hour and 20 minutes on the way to the deer lease. And I told Matt, I said, my business partner, I said, you got to read this. And he's like, yeah, let's do this. And so we did. And we quickly learned, I mean, within a very short amount of time, probably less than a couple of weeks, that self-implementing the EOS was not going to work. So we actually hired an EOS implementer. And I've heard enough stories from people that had self-implemented EOS that was not how we needed to go. And the main thing I heard was, well, we changed it a little bit to fit our needs. And I knew by reading Traction that was exactly what you're not supposed to do. And so it was enough that I got to go, okay, we got to go all in. And so that's what we did.
That's awesome. I mean, and as you know, right, it didn't happen overnight. You read the book, you kind of, you picked it up picked up some of the jargon. You probably tried implementing some of the things just in general, the ideas of getting everybody rowing in the same direction. And, but then you finally did it. And I find that's that's kind of an inflection point, right? When you finally say, we're going to do this, instead of talking about it, because we've had this conversation a million times. We spend a lot of time talking about stuff as MSPs because we're so busy. We get caught up in other things. We don't prioritize well. And then something like this comes along and you make the change, you make the decision to do it. And I know for me, it was one of the hardest things I could ever have done back in the day. And we were doing this back in the early 2000s, and it was scary. I was lucky enough to have a really good implementer. As you said, I think I would have probably had a heart attack trying to self-implement it just because of all the change and all the rules that you have to plug in place for that accountability piece that I needed for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't just put this out for everybody else on the team. I needed it. My partners needed it. And so, when you got started, like for me, here's a perfect example. My implementer said to me, you're going to lose probably 2 people during this process after he interviewed everybody. And I'm like, no way. My people are great. I got them in the right place. Things are going. We just need some direction. Within about 2 weeks, I lost 2 people. And I saw why. I could see it as it was happening and go, oh my God, wow. How did I not see this? So for you, what was that first, okay, we're in it. We're going to have someone implement this for us. What was that first big thing that kind of hit you like, okay, first, this is painful, and second, it's going to work?
It was probably trying to run one of the meetings on my own and one of the level 10. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm forgetting something. No, this isn't right. Wait, we're all getting off track. And so, especially when no one else had read the actual full Traction book, they had only read What the Heck is EOS. And so they had the concept, but they didn't have the details. And so we tried to kind of do our own L10 meetings is what they call them. And that was our first wake up moment. And then the second part of that is exactly what you said and what you experienced is it was a big fear of losing some of those legacy engineers that, they may be doing great documentation, but there's always skeletons and bodies buried somewhere that is going to rear their ugly heads at the worst possible moment. And you go, oh crap, that bridge is burned. What are we going to do? Type of a thing. And so we got lucky about a year before that. I had read a book by Jocko Willink called oh gosh, I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head right now, but it was basically convinced me that um, you can create a team out of just two people,
Hmm.
and it really depends on how those two people meld with each other that would actually work. Um, and so we created a project team, and knowing how that was going and how much buy-in that they had in it, um, we realized that the right people in the right seats was a concept more than just a concept. It was really something that we had to make focus on from a cultural standpoint so that we didn't lose anybody, knowing that we were still probably going to lose a couple of people, that we wanted to see if we could be an outlier and not lose anybody.
By
And
the way,
it
it was the book Extreme Ownership.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
military guy. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Chunk
Yeah.
of
And
book.
in,
Yep.
in that whole story, the story of him and his, they go out in teams of four, and there's a story in there that really said, yeah, that's the type of people that we need. And we knew that we had some really good people, but they just weren't structured in the way that they needed to, and which is why we were going through everything we were going through.
Right.
And it was that was one of the big ones, was like, okay, we've got these two people that we just knew were gonna have a hard time with this, especially the accountability part. That's the big part of it. And we had fostered a different culture where everybody kind of could do their own thing because we trusted them,
Right.
and they did do a good job on their own. But now there's metrics and there's KPIs, and there's an accountability piece to it that is really kind of rubbed some of them the wrong way. But luckily enough, out of a lot of heartfelt conversations and damn near some gloves that needed to be put on, we got through it. Everybody is better for it, and the team is, man, operating well right now.
It's a magical thing to jump to the end here, to the end of EOS. It's a magical thing when everybody in the company's rowing in the same direction, right?
Yes.
It's just a weird vibe. And I know a lot of people watching this are going to be like, yeah, okay, you jump to the end, but yeah, there's a lot of hard work in the middle. And by the
Right.
way, it's an ongoing process. And I think you'll agree, JP, that once you tackle and get past this 5 million mark, there may be a point where you need to redo this or have another implementer step in to get you to what new rocks are going to look like to get to 7 million or
Yeah.
10 million, right?
Yeah. So it's part of the reason why we didn't just do EOS by itself. We
Mm-hmm.
decided to do it with a coaching system as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there's several of them out there. You can name off more than I can, most likely. But EOS is very simple. It's a simple idea. It's a simple structure. It's, if you follow it, orthodox in doing exactly the way they say to do it, you'll do fine. But there's the granular pieces of running a business that they don't talk about in EOS, and they don't have necessarily all the processes. They depend on you to do the processes
Yep.
and walk through them. An implementer can get you some of that way in there, but I think you would spend a whole lot more time and effort into doing without going to one of these other business
Right.
coaching type systems. And so doing them together was definitely very hard on the pocketbook. But now that we're 24 months into it, it's something that we've tracked, and we've looked back and we go, yes, this was worth it, and we'll keep going. And to your point, I don't know that EOS is necessarily something that you'll outgrow, which you didn't say, but I
Right.
felt when I hear that, I feel like people think, well, I'm going to outgrow this.
Yeah.
Don't think so. I think it's just different. You
Yep.
learn how to scale it, using an economy of scales to be able to have more meaningful um, transition periods. Like you said, if you set those BHAGs, those big hairy goals, you have to reset.
Right.
And EOS has it kind of built in where you're doing that every 3 years anyway. But in our industry, things happen a little quicker. So even though we're setting 3 years, our BHAG is only 5 years out, not 10 years out.
Right.
Our next BHAG now is 10 million. So, in trying to do that in 3 years, I mean, we all see it. We just got done with our 2 day, and it's so easy to see how we're going to get there. The whole leadership team is like, yeah, I really didn't think that this was going to be possible, and now they're like, oh yeah, hell yeah, yeah, we could do this easily. We can do this.
You just said it. We all see it. That's a pretty
Yes.
amazing thing to say. We all see it and not just be talking about your leadership team or just you and your partner, because that doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
whole company has to see it. I mean, you know this. We've known people. I mean, we might have been these people back in the day, where hey, we got it under control. I know exactly where I want to be. But if I asked anybody in the company that very same question and they couldn't answer that question, I'm not doing something right. So it's funny, following EOS has gotten you to the point where you're like, we all see it. And you mean we, all the way down to the floor sweeper. Everybody in your company knows exactly what the goals are, what the vision is, and we know how to get there. We're all a part of it too.
Yeah.
And that's pretty
Absolutely.
cool. You said you mentioned rocks, and I found something funny clicked in my head that, you know, back in the old days I would use a rock to motivate in a different way. But what is a rock? What does a rock mean for an MSP that's going through this process? I know it's about high priority goals and stuff, but give me a little bit more on what the rocks have meant to your team and what a rock is just in general.
Sure. I got to back up a little bit, if
Okay.
you don't mind. One of the kind of going to your story that you got that buy-in, and it's not just
Mm-hmm.
Matt and I. One of the things that we thought was really, really odd when the implementer came in, one of the first things that they do is they make you sit down and redo your core values, because
Mm-hmm.
every decision gets made based on that moving forward, no matter what.
Yep.
And those core values get incorporated in every conversation, every meeting, everything. And I did not realize how important that was, but it is, including the rocks, and I'll explain in a second. And so we really had to. I mean, we were only supposed to spend a couple 3 hours on this. We spent like 4.5, 5 hours on it, because Matt and I were real passionate about the ones that we had created, but the rest of the team wasn't. The rest of the leadership team wasn't. And when we're done, now they all, every all the way down to the floor sweeper, like you said, they all use it, and they're starting to use them in their own personal lives as well. They'll come tell us stories. Hey, this was our number one, and it's in order for this reason, but our number one is gratitude. And they come tell me stories at least a couple times a month. Hey, uh, this is what happened this weekend. I was super grateful and learned to be grateful because of this particular core value. And so it's very important on that core value. How that leads into the rocks and everything is, as you're going through your quarterlies or you've got to set a goal. So every year you have a 2 day strategy meeting basically. And I hear a lot of companies and leadership that puts, in my opinion, the cart before the horse, and obviously in Gino Wickman's opinion as well. You should have your goal, and then you should have all of your problems. I mean, your rocks of how you're going to get there, and then you have those IDS moments, the
Right.
identify, discuss, and solve. And a lot of people put the IDS in front of the rocks themselves. Like, well, how are you supposed to have a rock when you don't even know when you already know the problems that are going to happen when you try to achieve that rock? So let's talk about rock for a second. A rock, the concept comes from, and there's some video about it on
Yeah.
YouTube. I know. Basically, you take a glass and and you got a pile of sand, you got a pile of little pebbles, and you got a pile of big rocks, and you say, hey, which do you want to put in there first? And most people say, put the sand in there, and then the pebbles, and then the rocks won't fit, right? The better way to do that is to get those rocks, those 3 or 4, maybe 5 rocks, put them in the glass, then pebbles, shake it a little bit, then the sand, then you get everything in the glass. So rocks are basically, you take those goals that you have, and let's just say it's us reaching 10 million in 3 years, or excuse me, in 5 years. Then you break those down, and then you find out, okay, in 3 years you need to be able to do this, and in 1 year you need to be able to make sure you're doing this, and then you create that rock. Well, what is it going to take to get to that point for that 1 year? And rocks are these quarterly check-in, or these goals, if you will, that are on a quarterly basis that says, okay, Here's how I know in 3 months that if I get to this point, then I know I'm a quarter of the way to that 1 year goal. And so that's exactly what a rock is. There are going to be problems. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be challenges and issues that you're going to have to overcome. But that shouldn't sway you from creating the rock. The rock's pretty self-explanatory. I've got to do $300,000 a month for 3 months to get to this particular dollar amount. If that's my dollar amount for the year, that's your rock. You got to get to this. Okay, what are then after everybody has a rock, and everybody in your leadership team should have at least one rock. Once you have those rocks, then you go, okay, I got to do $300,000 in 3 months. How am I going to do that? Here's the problems I'm going to have. And that'll lead you into a whole bunch of things where you create to-dos, you get through the challenges pretty quickly, or you realize, well, that rock is not reachable. We've got to go back and readjust it.
Mhm.
So there you go.
Oh, you mean you don't chase the same rock for 3 years?
No.
That's the beauty of it, right? The accountability. And look, you may not, it's like anything else. If you don't set the goals, you don't hit the goals. And it doesn't mean that you're going to crush every single goal, because that's why you go through this process. But in a quarter, it's a hell of a lot easier in a quarter to find out what's not working and then redo things than it is to go through a year or longer in some cases working on a problem that you just never had a way of solving because it was never a plan. It wasn't broken down like in rocks, which is the greatest way of this all working out. So I love the way you put it, which is why I asked the question.
Well, and I got a real quick story because
Good.
because you check those rocks out every quarter, and you will find out if it was really even worth it,
Mm-hmm.
if it gets accomplished or not. And so, or you adjust a little bit. It's not meant to be adjusted a lot and just keep re-adding the rock every quarter. That's not the way this works. It's the book is named Traction for a reason. You
Yeah.
have to get traction. So I'll give you a quick story. Last year, my service delivery manager, I won't say his name, but he's new for this team. He's not part of the legacy team. So about half of our team has been with us for over 10 years. And so he's new, service delivery. We hired outside in for this position. And he had gone through EOS before. So he kind of knew what to expect in this arena with us going through this.
Right.
And at the beginning of last year, we were part of our revenue goal was to get to a certain dollar amount. And as we challenged ourselves for the first quarter, that was going to be raising basically our all-in clients. We got about 46, 47 of them, and we were going to be raising their rates. We hadn't raised rates in a long time. Because I own most of those relationships, because I'm the main sales guy, the only real sales guy. I didn't get them done. And so we went ahead and did what we weren't supposed to do and just moved the rock to the second quarter. And I still didn't get them done. And so when we were sitting in our quarterly meeting, he hammered me. He pushed. He was holding me accountable in a way that a lot of owners and entrepreneurs' ego and pride would probably get in the way and quite possibly fire him. It was that bad, at least from my
Right.
perspective. But he was at some point, I just basically, he kept saying, "Why isn't this done? Let's schedule this right now." And I said, "No, because we got to do that." He says, "No, now you're trying to IDS this right now, and we're not going to do that." I mean, he was really pushing. And it finally, as red as my face had turned, most people know me well enough to know that I say I'm too blessed to stress a lot. And so they understand that I have a very strong faith in my religion. So I basically heard God in my ear and thumped me on the head and said, "He's doing what he's supposed to do. Take a breath." And I mean, it was clear as a bell. And so I stepped back and I went, and I gave him the reason why. I said, because I don't want to be the bad guy. I've earned this relationship with these people over the last decade or two, and I don't want to go raise their rates. And I just feel bad about it. And also, I just laid it all out there. And he said, "Good. I'm going to take it off your plate, and I'm going to go get this done before the end of the year." And I went, "So why didn't you leave with that?" And he goes, "Because you wouldn't have bought into it, and you wouldn't have owned it if we didn't go down that exercise."
Right.
And I was just like, "Holy moly. That is a owner of a company, an entrepreneur, someone who's probably got a little too much ego and pride, that would be me, not wanting to give something up that had enough trust in this leadership team for him to push me as hard as he did. To me, that's at the root of what EOS is and this business coaching has taught me over the last couple of years.
That's a that's awesome. That's a great story, and that's exactly what we were chatting about when we were talking about why we shouldn't self facilitate, because that would have never happened,
No, it wouldn't have. I
right?
guarantee you.
You would have just said, I'll get to it when I get to it,"
Yep.
and it would have rolled on. And so that's what being held accountable means. And if you're going to do this right, even business owners need to be held accountable, or
Yes,
else,
you do.
just like everything else, it starts at the top. And if the top isn't doing it, nobody else is going to do it. It's just yeah, that process really truly gets you through it. And of course, you have to find the right implementer, right? Someone that's willing to challenge you. And that's something that I found, from a community standpoint, that we all challenge each other. And now that we're learning that part of it and have the traction part of it, it just goes to complete success. Because
Yes.
at any given time, I know from a standpoint of I got something going on and it doesn't look right, you'd be the first person to say, "Hey, KP, you're looking at this wrong," right?
Yep.
And I don't take that as, "What are you talking about? Who are you to tell me?" Right? I take that as, "Oh, that's my friend. He understands he understands me. He understands the business, and we can move on from that." And I think being able to do that with an implementer who's there for that sole purpose of getting your business rowing in the right direction. Yeah, I can't say enough about it. Like I said, it changed my whole entire world and my outcome on life when we were talking about and doing this and running it with an implementer. And that's all I've heard, going down the line. From a standpoint of, we touched on it a little bit, but from your standpoint, how does EOS address team alignment?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say that because it's a couple ways. So we require any new team member, and including everybody before we got actually started, to read that book. What the heck is EOS?
Mm-hmm.
So everybody understands kind of where we're going. The fact that we had to redo our core values, and everybody, we talk about them in every single meeting. We talk about them into our monthly one-on-ones with our team. They get talked about a lot. So that alignment all of a sudden has a lot more clarity on the particular direction. They all know that part of my job is to come up with a bunch of ideas, to go shake hands, kiss babies, that all matters, and they see why that matters. They see how we're measuring that kind of stuff, going to as that visionary, as that CEO, and managing those big high end relationships with our bigger clients and stuff. They see and understand that that's necessary much better than they used to. So that alignment of everybody rowing in the right direction is solidified because of EOS. Um, Internally, I mean, one of our rocks in the first quarter is to improve the culture of our team. So a couple of us are reading a couple of books, and we're going to implement some certain things, including an internal satisfaction, like a smile back, but internal, like crew or something.
Right,
And it's
right.
going to mean something. It's not going to be just use it as a tool. It's going to have some um, beef behind it, some depth behind it. And so working out those particular things was kind of fun. I'm not going to give anything away because I think there's some things that I'll say for the next time I'm on your podcast here.
Oh God. Well, like we talked about a little bit of uh, how hard it can be. It's not an easy decision. It's definitely not cheap to hire an implementer. But separate from that, what were the potential challenges or the challenges that you had implementing EOS? Let's go to the challenge part of it. What were those challenges?
Um, Sticking to the basically the EOS way of doing things. That's probably the biggest challenge. And then knowing that our business coaching side of things was did it that way, but they had some tweaking to certain things. So that was a little bit of a challenge in that we knew we needed to do the business coaching side of things the way that they do it, but trying to pull that back around into the EOS way because it was working well for us. It was bringing our team together, as you said, in alignment. It was bringing the leadership team because we started with the leadership team. We've just now started really, well, I guess it's probably been about 6 months, but really pushing all of that out to the teams, the individual teams themselves. The other part was really creating that accountability chart and what those roles really meant and how to put KPIs around those particular pieces. And I'm not just talking about the internal team. I'm talking about one of the things that I have said for many, many years is that in our industry is my opinion is it's a lot more unique than a lot of other industries, and especially around the community side of things. And so, Ken, because you do this a lot, we take this to heart. So we can't be here if it weren't for three things: our teams, our clients, and our vendors. And they all three equally have a responsibility and are needed to create a successful business. So
Hold on, I gotta cry. Sorry. No, it's a great point, and it's something that's overlooked a lot on every one of those sides, right? We have employees that don't think about the other two, don't think the vendors matter, or don't think the leadership matters. We have vendors that don't take into account that the MSPs are actually very integral to them, and you have to have that mix. And it just goes around in a circle. For we have owners that don't feel that, I remember when I first started, the owners that I was partnering up with, because they brought me into the company as I was the floor sweeper basically in the three of them. The two of them started the company, and then I started to work my way up, and their mentality was old school IBM. They work for me, they get a paycheck, they just need to do their job. It's like, wait, no, that's not how businesses work. That's not how you reward people for doing well and incentivize. And so I was the new kid bringing in the new ideas to old school, just business people. And that mix didn't happen overnight, right? Learning how to do that, to figure out that every one of those pieces matter, and employees especially, but then of course vendors. And the vendor MSP relationships even now is so strained. The MSPs think that the vendors owe them the world just because they give them their business. It doesn't matter if they spend $5 a month with them; they think they owe them the world. And
yeah,
vendors, on the flip side, think that they can just push their way into an account and promise stuff without actually delivering that. That I don't like to call it 50-50 anymore, JP, and I think you'll appreciate this. I have this 51-49, and my philosophy is I'm always going to give the 51. I just
yeah,
expect the 49. I'm going to go a little bit extra to make sure that it works, because I think that that's who I am, and that's what I think. That's how I think a partnership should work. Going to do that little extra. So not 50-50, 51-49, a little bit of imbalance, but I think that's good for how I approach things and do things. And I think that vendors and just us as humans could start to have that approach a little bit more and understand that when you do these things and you build those relationships and you do it, like you said, those three important pillars, things come back to you. Things work out. You don't even have to sell, right? You know how I feel about that word sell.
yep.
When you're doing things the right way, things naturally come back to you.
They will. They
And it's
absolutely
just,
will.
this all kind of weaves its way into it. So anybody out there, what would be your tip to MSPs out there and starting to look at EOS?
You asking me or you
I'm
asking the
asking you.
audience?
Yes, you.
um, Honestly, I would. My number one advice is do not try to self implement
Hmm.
unless you have that operations manager or director that is truly that A type personality and has done it a couple of three times before.
Hmm.
Then I might consider it. But it was very worthwhile for us for at least a couple of years to hire an actual implementer. Secondary to that would be I don't know that EOS is the answer alone for the MSP community.
Hmm.
There's enough of the professional coaching side of things like Pax8 Academy, like What's some of the other ones out there? I know there's more.
There's a bunch. There's Evolve. Right? Is it
Yeah.
still Evolve? Yeah. There's Evolve.
Yeah.
There's Encore Strategic. There's a
Yep, yep.
bunch.
I think that my secondary would be to get the one-on-one. Uh, let me rephrase this. I'm going to steal this from The Matrix because I love that movie. Know thyself.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is be intentionally humble as the entrepreneur, as the leader of your company, and really look at, and again, do this before you even look at cost. Know if you are going to be the barrier at certain areas of getting something done. And one of those barriers that I'm alluding to here is there's a lot of peer group coaching out there. I know that was not good for us because we can get into these situations like this, but then the follow through almost never happens. And we all have great intentions, but when you're in a peer group, it's it is absolutely something you should be doing as part of your one-on-one coaching that you may get. You always do those peer groups. But if you're someone who doesn't necessarily follow through very well, or you are head in the clouds, or you get distracted easily, squirrel, type of a thing, you're that true entrepreneur visionary that likes to do a whole bunch of different things. You're good at it, but you may not be very good at bringing the whole company together
Yep.
to run forward like that. So again, I would look at possibly some sort of one-on-one business coaching to go along with the EOS.
That I couldn't agree more. It's interesting how there's so many successful business owners, but MSP business owners who started out as just the technical person. And we say this all the time. When I did it, yeah, I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know anything about marketing, didn't know about finance, didn't all those things. But then it's like, wait a minute, as owners, we have to know stuff. We have to know about that stuff, at least enough to make sure that we're not doing anything wrong, right? And then hire the right people to plug into those as you get bigger. But man, oh man, without actually looking to your peers and finding the right people. And by the way, finding the right implementer is no different. Make sure that you understand where your business is and you know where you want to go, and then talk to other businesses that have done it and make sure you're getting the advice from those people instead of somebody selling themselves to you and telling you they're the best implementer in the world, which usually is a flag that they're not. No, nobody's going to come to you and say,
Yeah.
I'm the best. Let the other people who do that business tell you that. Work with your peers, talk to folks like JP, see what he did, who he went to, do things like that so that you can get that piece of it. And just like anything else, talk to folks, work with your peers. We always talk about this co-opetition instead of competition because we should be all working together. And I'll say it out loud. As on the other side of the fence, when I was an MSP, my business would have never went anywhere if I didn't know people like JP and the friends that we all became during the years that this stuff happened. I know JP could say the same thing. There's so many people that he's connected with now that we've connected through each other that are making our lives and businesses that much better. You got to make those connections and do those types of things.
Yeah. To a follow up to that, I would probably say if you are still that type of a person that really needs to be more involved like that, then one of the things that got presented to us for a business coaching that we did many, many years ago, because they were a client more than anything, was to find someone that's a competitor is the best way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's small, one-man shop, two-man shop. And even if you are a one or two-man shop, and mentor to somebody. It doesn't have to be in the same area, but we go to enough of these events that you'll find someone and mentor to them. I've done it a couple of times now. And I'm a much better person. I think our community is much better because now we've lifted somebody up. Even if you don't know what mentoring is, because I didn't understand what it was, it's really just basically saying, "Hey, how you doing? How are you doing this?" The things that we do at the bar, or not so much at the bar as much anymore, but just sitting around even and saying, "Hey, how are you doing this? What are you doing here?" And then using what you've been taught and what you've learned to help them be a little bit better than what they were when you first started talking with them.
Yep.
That goes and so we do it at events and we kind of started doing it, but be intentional about doing it on a monthly call basis for about an hour at the very least, and just having that conversation with somebody.
100%. It's very important. And I've actually gotten to know some of the people that you mentored. So it's interesting to see.
Yeah.
I've actually watched some of the folks where, maybe they were that deer that was unstable and having a hard time with its first steps, and then now I see them strutting through the industry doing pretty well. So
Better than
I
me.
yeah, I love that. And one thing that came up when you were talking that I want all MSPs to think about, and if you haven't done it, roll back to it. And obviously EOS will put you there, is because we were mostly technical people or people who jumped into getting that entrepreneurial bug and wanted to do this thing. We never actually took a second to say, who are we? What do we do? And who do we serve? It's a very simple process, but and not doing that, at least for me, my business went flying in 70 different directions. We had customers that would beat on us, customers that were good to us. Everything was everywhere. But that's because I didn't know what my
Yeah.
ideal client profile was. I had no idea because I was taking anything that was paying me money. Right. So if you haven't done that and you're starting to get on track and you're starting to, learn things like pumpkin planning and
Mhm.
things like that, where you're learning that you don't need every customer, and you don't need every customer. They're worse off. You're worse off with some of those people who you think that they're giving you money, but they're not worth having. When you get through this process, boil it back down and figure out who you are, what you do, and who you serve. If you don't know that, things will just always spiral out of control. So it makes sense to do that no matter where you are on this journey. And then from there, you can decide, okay, maybe we need to do something like traction, or maybe we start with a coach.
Mhm.
But again, don't just go out and go after any coach. Don't just go out and go after any implementer. Do your homework and make sure it's a match for you, who you are, what you do, and who you serve. Because if you don't do that, it may not be a factor that person wasn't a good coach or a good facilitator or anything that you do. It could be that they're not the right fit, because how are you the right fit if you don't even know what you're doing or what direction you're going in?
Very well, very wise, very
And
wise.
yeah, and it's funny, it's wise now, right? Because 30 years later, we're starting to get it. We're starting to figure it out. But the main thing is, it doesn't matter how late in the game you figure it out, as long as you do. And don't feel like it's the end, or you're gonna find a way to get yourself that focus. And I really feel like it doesn't matter how far down the line you are, you can pull yourself back.
I heard something the other day that kind of fits right here because it reminded me of it. Knowledge is knowing that a tomato is not a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put that fruit in a fruit salad. And then I heard an add on to that. Philosophy is wondering if ketchup is a smoothie.
That's a good one.
So just because you may not, and I say that just because you may not be doing well right now, or you're not quite sure the direction that you're going, just keep going.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing I can say there is um, because that wisdom piece of it will come. And this is also why I say find someone to mentor to. And it may not even be in our industry. I think it helps if you're trying to grow your business, but find someone that you can mentor to, that someone depends on you for some of your business acumen that you have, or are gaining as you go through these systems,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll help you retain them, and it'll help you help someone else grow and do the same thing.
Well said. It is an amazing industry that we're into. I do believe that with all the troubles and things that we talk about from a standpoint of the MSP space, there's also so much good. And I
Yes.
really feel like some people haven't tapped into that good yet, right? They're not out there looking and seeing. There are so many people that are willing to help, truly actually help. not the what's in it for me people. We have a lot of people in our circle alone, JP, that we know of
Yes, we do.
that are just willing to help people out, make things better, and get things going in the right direction. So, if you stay with your head down and or your head buried in the sand and you just, or get stuck in that circle of woe is me, then sure, it's going to stay that way and you're going to feel that way. But I promise you, if you take a second, step outside of that zone and actually look around and ask for a little help, you're going to find that not only is there help, but man, that light at the tunnel is no longer a train.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, it's and again, one of the reasons why we're doing things like this is have these conversations and get the word out there, right? This is about our community and what we're all doing to help. And I will say, let me end this off with JP. Let's just make this not about EOS, and even though we talked a lot about EOS, but we also talked about community and people and just all of it. If you had one piece of advice that maybe helped you along the way that kind of got you motivated for MSPs out there that may be struggling with anything. We have day-to-day struggles all the time. What advice would you give to an MSP that's struggling right now?
And again, mine comes from more of a faith. My faith is that gratitude absolutely is the key to happiness. If you find a way to be grateful for anything and everything that's happened and know that it's for a good reason, then you will be able to get through damn near everything in life, no matter what it is. And there were many times, I say many, there was at least 3 or 4 times that didn't know that we were going to make it. And certain things would happen, primarily the loss of a really big client,
Mm-hmm.
and so learning to be grateful for that and know that something better is around the corner or it was for a good reason, um, is what absolutely got us through a lot of things. And that's why it's our number one core value. And it's why I say too blessed to stress, is because the more you put out there, the give twice as much as you receive, and it will come back on you. It may take a while. So patience is truly a virtue, but it's good.
I love it. Well, JP, where can everybody find you coming up in the next few months? You're going to be at some events.
I'm going to be at Zero Trust World.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, if they allow me to go, I'll be at the Exchange,
March.
August.
Oh, August.
I'm not going to go to the March one. I am trying to also be at the one of the new PAX 8 Beyonds over in Europe. Specifically, I want to be at the Asia one.
Oh, nice.
Hoping to get over there. I got to go to the European one in Berlin last year, and boy, you want to talk about opening your eyes to more mentoring opportunities, and the people that you meet, the way they do business over there is it's worthwhile getting to know somebody over there. And then I'll probably be at IT Nation for sure, possibly NerdioCon. I'm going to try to let my team do a little more stuff this year.
Sure.
So I've got one of them coming to Zero Trust World with me, and um, we're making a major focus on the security side of things. We didn't even get to talk about Todyl at all. I know it's not what it was about, but from that security focus, I'll say this, and I know you don't ever ask for this stuff, but as we made a major focus and we were going through a vetting process of vendors, one of the things that we're looking for is the ease of not only deployment, but the ease of the maintenance and continuing through from a security and I mean, not security, a training piece of it. And so it's one of the reasons, obviously, why we've chose Todyl for a big portion of that. So for heavy lifting. So
Well, I appreciate that. You're right. Checks in the mail. No, we know we don't operate that way.
no, you don't.
For anybody out there who has questions or wants to just get to know a really good person, find JP on LinkedIn. He's an awesome dude. He's someone you want to connect with. Are you even on LinkedIn, JP? I just thought about that as I said it. Not as much as
I am old school you text me, call me. Those are my preferred ways of communicate. Email takes a little bit longer to refer to or respond back to. LinkedIn takes even longer. So
All right.
I try to get on them, and I do try to answer them, or at least say, hey, can we take this to email or a phone call? And
Sure.
so yeah.
I'm just making sure that people get out there and find you and get connected because you're definitely a good human. Obviously, you're someone I've known for quite a long time and love to have you on here. And we had a great conversation. And folks, just like I said, take away from this, take anything away from this, do something. Change what you're doing if it's not working and find ways to do it. There's lots of help out there. EOS is just one of those things that we wanted to cover a little bit because both JP and I have seen it do huge things in our businesses, and I've seen it do a lot for many MSPs. So I thought it was a worthwhile conversation to have. So, JP, thanks very much for being on the second episode of
My pleasure. Thanks for
Spotlight
having me.
Series with Todyl. And I'm sure I'll see you around the community. And once again, thanks very much. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you all being here. Have a good one.